The case for or against Corbin Burns. I'm going to break down some extreme stats for you over the past season and what do the guys on the SNY panel think about him. Okay, Met fans, welcome back to another episode of MetCast. Today, we are going to do a deep dive into probably the best pitcher, in my opinion, on the market, Corbin Burns, the former Milwaukee Brewer who a lot of Met fans all go back to his days with Milwaukee, David Stearns, the bad arbitration. But remember, during those arbitration days, David Stearns was not involved with that stuff. So I don't think there's a lot of bad blood there. Corbin Burns is a David Stearns type of guy, and I want to prove to you today why the Mets should go after him. And maybe the guys at SNY think differently, but I want to get right into it. Let's talk about what a lot of people have worried about. He had a solid year last year, 2.95 ERA, a whip slightly over 1, but the main concern for most Mets fans, or what appears to be for most Mets fans, is the way he finished his season. And I pulled up his splits for last year. You clearly see March, April, May, June, ERAs 1.50, 2.76, 2.17, 2.12. Well on his way to probably an easy Cy Young Award in the American League with the Baltimore Orioles. But one thing to keep in mind is, we can't hide what the stats show us. Going to that second half of the year, you got to the trade deadline. The first month he had an ERA above 3.09 was July. And then he had, I think it's safe to say, an absolute brutal August. 25 innings pitched, 21 earned runs. He had some really bad starts there. But then you look at September, and that's what a lot of fans don't want to talk about. And that's what drives me nuts. Well, he finished the season poorly. That is so factually incorrect. And here are his stats to prove it. 3-0 or 3-2, 30 innings pitched, 4 earned runs. An ERA of 1.2 in the final month of the season. Now, to me, Corbin Burns, without a doubt, is the best prospect on the market, is the best starting pitcher on the market. So many people will point to, well, his spin rate is declining a little bit. He's 29 years old. He throws a heavy sinker. He would work perfect in Citi Field. We can't rely on a guy like Kodai Senga to be healthy next season. When are we going to learn? When there's an ace type out there like him, you go and get him. Now, I want to get into what the guys at SNY thought. I think it was kind of a mixed bag here. I'm going to pull it up on our Twitter feed. I'll react to it as you're watching it. Let's take a listen.
McCarron, your thoughts on the idea of Corbin Burns being at the top of the Mets wish list?
Well, I mean, I would just move him right down below Juan Soto if I were running things.
I agree. Right down the wish list behind Juan Soto if I was running things. 100% agree with him.
That's about right.
Yeah, I think that Soto ought to be the priority. This is a rare opportunity. We've been into the reasons why. Corbin Burns, to me, very interesting. To me, that looks like a contract, though, that you'll ultimately suffer on the back end on. I don't know if David Stearns is that kind of GM where he's willing to say, like, okay, first 2-3 years are going to be great and we're going to be really good because of this guy. And then the back end will just hold on for dear life. I would do it because I think the Mets are a team that will be pointed toward the World Series next year. And if he can help get you the one, then it's basically what the Yankees did with CC Sabathia in 2009 when they signed him. They got the one World Series out of it. He was good other years and then not so good other years. But overall, it was a decent contract because of that one title.
Let me know if you guys agree with him. If you gave Corbin Burns a 6 or 7 year contract and we got a World Series, say in year 2, and he was brutal the last 2 or 3 seasons, are you taking it? I sure as hell am. I want to see a World Series. But I disagree with him there where Corbin Burns is guaranteed to be brutal the last 2 or 3 years of his contract. You're telling me you give him a 7-year deal? Yeah, I'm probably worried about the last 2 years of that. But if you can get him for 6 years and you're forced to eat one bad season, I think it's a no-brainer for the Mets.
Yeah, my thing with this is
continue.
I know that David Stearns in places like Milwaukee where he really didn't have a ton of money to spend and didn't love falling, into a 6 or 7-year deal for a pitcher who, how many of those years is he going to be hurt? But it was big for the Mets this year with Sean Manaea and Luis Severino. Those were two guys that you took a chance on that turned into a pair of really good pitchers. But you didn't have that sure thing. You didn't have that Senga, that ace type. I think Corbin Burns gives you at least some stability where as Anthony said, he's posting every single start, every 5 days he's out there for you. And I know that David Stearns hasn't done that, but he may have not had the financial capabilities of doing that. It's a lot of free agents on the market. There's a lot of
You think David Stearns wanted to trade him? Give me a break.
pitchers, which could bring the Burns price down just a little bit so it is palatable and you're not throwing away money on a guy who might be a bad deal over 6 or 7 years.
All right, Tacoma. David Stearns was in Milwaukee. Corbin Burns was in Milwaukee. What do you make of that relationship? Good thing? Not such a good thing for the potential of Burns becoming a Met.
I think it cuts both ways, and I think, frankly, both sides of this are being overblown. I've heard people who say, oh, well, those guys were together for 5-6 years in Milwaukee. That means that they have a great relationship. And I've also heard people say, well, there was this nasty arbitration hearing, which, by the way, David Stearns was not even running the show at that point. So I don't think that's that big of a deal either. I will say this. For as much as David Stearns is familiar with Corbin Burns, he knows his warts as well as his good points, as well as his strengths. So I do think it cuts both ways. The one thing I'll say is that David Stearns, guys, is not the type of GM to grow attached to players, right? We saw that with the Josh Hader deal.
All the great GMs
in the
are
clubhouse every day, and he's like having these warm and fuzzy relationships with players. That's a good thing in my eyes. But when it comes to a negotiation with someone like Corbin Burns, who he has known in the past, I don't think it makes him like a heavy favorite to land Burns just because he knew him before.
And that's their thoughts on it. I don't necessarily agree with them. I think he brings in a legitimate ace to this team. And remember one thing, too. We talked about in our prior video what Juan Soto values. Really two things we keep hearing about. Of course, the money. Wants to be the highest paid player of all time. Will he get there? I personally don't think so. I don't think he's going to hit the $700 million mark. I think we're going to be surprised how low this contract ends up being. People love to exaggerate. But number two is winning. And winning in the future. And if we're looking at the teams we're competing against, if winning is everything, he goes to the Dodgers. But if it's not everything, but it's up there, and looking at the future of where he wants to be, if he wants to be on the East Coast and it's really just between the Mets and the Yankees, what better way to entice him to come here and say, we're not only going to invest in you now, we're investing in the team now and in the future. Look at the prospects we have. The Brandon Sproats following right behind him. You have, we've been over it a million times. The Acuñas, the Williams, the Mauricios, yada, yada, yada. Top 10 farm system easily. But not only that, we're willing to put our money where our mouth is. The Yankees are hamstrung. If they go get a guy like Juan Soto and pay him between $43 and $45 million a year, odds are they're not bringing in any other studs. I fully expect the Mets to be right at the top of the list when it comes to Corbin Burns. You bring him in here, you show Juan Soto how serious you are about winning. You make him the highest paid player overall contract-wise, position-wise, outside of Ohtani in the history of the game. You bring in Corbin Burns, and you're still not done. Maybe those things, those reports we were seeing today about Willy Adames are true and the Mets are really interested. I would not be surprised. I'm telling you right now, remember this. I will not be surprised if we walk away this offseason, maybe trading for a reliever like Devin Williams, who's going to be UFA in Milwaukee after this year. They declined that big option that he had. He's out there for potentially being an eighth inning guy. You bring back Pete Alonso at first base. You bring Willy Adames to play second base. Maybe some of these prospects get traded and you bring in a guy like Crochet who's looking for that extension. You bring in Corbin Burns and you sign Juan Soto. With all of those moves, we are still not at the payroll that we were last year. That's how bloated it was when we're paying half of Max Scherzer's contract or Justin Verlander's contract. Think about this, how lucky the Mets got. Justin Verlander would have counted $17.5 million towards 2025's books. And if you're over the Cohen tax, think of how much that is. But because Justin Verlander got hurt last year, the Mets were able to avoid that $17.5 million. It is found money. Now we have the reports of Steve Cohen flying out west, Hal Steinbrenner's going out there, the Dodgers are going out there, multiple teams are going out there. I expect Toronto to be out there, the Phillies to be out there. Rumors are the Braves may poke their head in there. We hear the BS story that the Rays aren't getting involved, which I highly doubt it. But this offseason is going to be super exciting. Don't forget what David Stern said. We expect to spend a significant amount of the resources that we recouped after last season in regard to money-wise. Let me know if you agree with me. Is Corbin Burnes our guy? I think he needs to be our guy. If we plan on competing with the teams like the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Braves, who have lineups like they have, you need a shutdown starter. We gave up nearly 7.5 runs last year, or this past playoffs, against the Dodgers. That cannot happen. But be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Of course, it helps us if you like our content. We'll be back shortly. We're going to break down Sean and I in one of these future videos. A lot of rumors are out there, some with crazy years and crazy money that I personally wouldn't touch. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Let's go Mets. And until next time, peace.